Hello friend, I want to tell you about the Skoda Fabia car. The Skoda Fabia replaced the already outdated Felicia in 1999, although it was still offered for 2 years. A year after its premiere, the Fabia Combi debuted, along with new TDI engines, and in 2001 the Fabia sedan and a 2.0-liter petrol engine appeared. In 2002, the 1.2 HTP unit was introduced to the range, and a year later the RS version with a powerful 1.9 TDI diesel engine. In 2004, a facelift was carried out and the 1.9 SDI engine was abandoned, and production continued until the debut of the second-generation Fabia in 2007. Compared to the Felicia, the Fabia looked modern, but the sedan and station wagon versions were hard to call anything but ugly. They were only offered with 4 and 5 door bodies. By the standards of the time, the Fabia offered a huge amount of space in its class, and the Combi's trunk has a capacity of 426 liters. The hatchback also has a large trunk, at 260 liters. Unfortunately, the interior design is boring. The simple cockpit dictated by the trends of all Volkswagen Group brands may appeal only in richer equipment versions, e.g. Elegance or RS, but the standard is hard, gray-brown plastics, which are nevertheless assembled properly. The equipment is usually not very rich, and the basic versions did not even have power steering. There are many cars on the market without air conditioning, but you can find decently equipped models for this segment, although they are a bit behind the Japanese or French Fabias. The classic version has ISOFIX anchors, which was not so obvious in higher segments even later. The comfort version is already well equipped, provided that the first owner ordered air conditioning, which was an option. To be sure that air conditioning will be on board, you have to look for the Elegance version. The debut of the Fabia was a bit ahead of what was to come in Volkswagen. It used a floor pan that was later used in the VW Polo IV. Of course, it was an extremely simple construction with a McPherson strut, based on a triangular wishbone and a torsion beam with shock absorbers and springs mounted separately. This suspension provides the Fabia with a good balance between travel comfort and safety, a typical Volkswagen Group product. The interior is relatively quiet. To enjoy the ride, the Fabia needs around 100 HP or simply a 1.9 TDI diesel. Engines. In the Skoda Fabia, only simple and proven drive units were installed, and the only exception to the rule is the basic 1.4L unit with an 8-valve head, which is a Skoda design. The remaining engines come from the VW Group. The Skoda engine is a modernized unit from the Felicia and Favorite, and its roots actually go back to the Skoda 130, although it is difficult to call it identical. It had completely replaced equipment. Unfortunately, it does not provide either dynamics or fuel economy, but it works perfectly on gas and is easy to repair. The most popular engine on our market is also the 1.4L engine, but with a 16-valve head. It was available in 2 power versions, 75 HP and 101 HP. Of course, the more powerful one is less common. If someone wants to buy a Fabia with an automatic gearbox, they are doomed to only the 1.4L engine. Even more rare is the 8-valve 2.0-liter petrol engine with 115 horsepower, which also powered the Octavia and Passat. A newer unit that survived until its successor is the 3-cylinder 1.2-liter petrol engine with 54 or 64 horsepower, depending on the head. A liter petrol engine was also occasionally installed, but this is an exceptional rarity. The Fabia diesel range had 3 engines. The basic one was a naturally aspirated 1.9 SDI engine, which didn't impress with acceleration, but was hard to destroy. Its turbocharged brother, the 1.9 TDI, powered the RS version, but was also available in the standard version and at that time had a power of 101 HP. Just before the facelift, a 3-cylinder 1.4 TDI engine, 70 hydrogen phosphide, appeared, which was to replace the worn-out SDI. In this video we will look at the most popular engine version, the 1.416V with 75 HP. It is achieved at 5,000 revolutions per minute, and the maximum torque of 126 Newton meters appears at 3,800 revolutions per minute. As you can see, this is not a high revving engine. It also provides good flexibility due to the relatively high torque. With this engine, the Fabia is able to accelerate to 170 km per hour and is satisfied with about 7 to 8 liters of fuel per 100 km. What's broken? It is difficult to answer unequivocally about the failure rate of the Skoda Fabia I in general. It is a very durable car, almost armored and resistant to neglect, but on the other hand it has many problems that can make the owner's life miserable. If someone likes mechanics and reads books like I Repair Myself, then the Fabia I will certainly meet their expectations. Sales representatives also praise this model for its resistance to everything. However, people who require the reliability of Japanese cars will be very disappointed. Let's start with the bodywork, which has no major corrosion problems, but a manufacturing defect is the corrosion of the rear boot lid. Another defect is the leaking door seals, which harden, which can cause water to collect inside. It's worth taking a look under the mats before buying a used Fabia. The paintwork is good quality, but the standard is dull headlights. They can be regenerated or simply replaced with new ones. The suspension is a bit worse, although it is simple and resistant to large holes. It starts to knock quite quickly. The culprit is of course the metal rubber elements, which have to be replaced relatively often. Fortunately, in the front wishbones each rubber can be replaced separately. The rear beam silent blocks are very durable. Importantly, suspension maintenance is simple and cheap, and only the replacement of large front wishbone rubbers requires special tools. The power steering system can be a problem, but it is not particularly expensive to repair. Equally cheap to service is the reliable braking system, consisting of discs on the front axle and drums on the rear. The only drawback is the fairly common blown fuse of the ABS system. Now let's move on to the engine. The 1.416V engine is famous for one serious defect, which, however, does not affect all units and not all incidents cause further consequences. Sometimes low temperatures cause the breather to freeze and then there can be major disruptions in the lubrication system. Lack of lubrication consequently causes slight rubbing of the piston rings, which in the long run ends in greater engine oil consumption. Unfortunately, it is difficult to determine how often this problem occurs, but mechanics who already have their own technology for modifying the engine chamber ventilation system are familiar with it. A symptom that suggests such a condition is a raised oil dipstick and leaks from the lower part of the engine and the oil indicator light coming on. This cannot be ignored. In addition, the Volkswagen unit struggles with ignition system failures, coils and hall sensor, and uneven engine operation and power drops due to injector failures. These faults should be eliminated as soon as possible, because the incorrect composition of the mixture and unburned fuel can damage the relatively delicate and expensive catalytic converter. There may also be a fault in the form of a noisy timing system, which is most often the result of poor operation of hydraulic valve clearance adjusters. It is therefore worth remembering to change the oil regularly every 15,000 kilometers, manufacturer's recommendation. The recommended oil is 10W40, but you can successfully pour in synthetic, even 5W30. When servicing, it is worth remembering to replace the timing drive every 90,000 kilometers, along with the water pump, the failure of which can destroy the engine. The durability of the drivetrain is quite good, but most units struggle with a creaking gearbox when changing gear from first to second. The biggest pain in the Fabia is the little things, most of which are related to the electrics. Generally, the ground connections or other electrical contacts corrode, which is the cause of the least serious faults. However, there are worse ones, such as a brake light switch failure, which can ultimately lead to a collision. Quite often, the vehicle's ventilation system fails, the only symptom of which is the heating or cooling of the interior. The culprit is the flaps controlling the system. If the car is equipped with air conditioning, you should expect a failure of the temperature sensor, which can be found on the evaporator. Another, Very well-known problem is the inoperative N80 valve responsible for venting the fuel tank. The symptom of the fault is the inability to start the car on a warm engine. Basically, only replacing the valve helps. Another valve that can fail is EGR. The operating costs of each car can be divided into several types. The first, which can be called direct, result from fuel and insurance costs. A good solution here would be to install a gas system or buy a car with an already installed system. This will reduce costs by about 30 to 40%, which, with a petrol consumption of 7 to 8 L, 100 kilometers, can quickly bring tangible benefits. The engine described here, like any other petrol engine in the Fabia, tolerates LPG installations very well. The second type of costs results from the reliability of the car, but these also depend on two factors: the prices of spare parts and services and the failure rate, i.e. the frequency of visiting the mechanic. There are cars that are unreliable but cheap to repair, or reliable but expensive to repair. The Skoda Fabia can be considered a relatively unreliable car, but very cheap to repair. The Skoda Fabia I is a car worth considering, provided that you are not looking for something with character, beautiful and well equipped. The only version that could partially meet such expectations is the RS with diesel. Despite the relatively high failure rate of this model, the Fabia is a very durable car, so suitable for so-called torture. The 1.416V or the naturally aspirated 1.9 SDI diesel engine is particularly recommended for the city, although the 1.4 TDI engine will certainly not cause any problems in large cities. The 1.9 TDI diesel and the 2.0 petrol with a gas installation are ideal for long distances. Thanks for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know of any problems with this car that I haven't mentioned, be sure to write about them in the comments.
I have good news for you. Now, if you are planning to buy a used car, or learn more about your car, you no longer need to search for the information you need on the internet. We have collected everything in one place for you, on the website carme.pro. Here you can find out everything about the car, what breaks and at what mileage, any problems with engines, chassis or gearboxes, which trim levels are better not to mess with and how not to lose money buying a used car. You will learn all this on carme.pro.